Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar hosted by Excel Alpha. Today's topic is CPQ for transportation logistics. We'll discuss how Oracle CPQ Cloud can help transportation and logistics companies streamline their coding process. I am Devang Bhavsar, and I lead the CPQ practice at Excel Alpha. I am the moderator for today's discussion. And I'm glad to announce that we have two experts on the call today with us. Ben Johnson is a CPQ expert. He has been implementing CPQ for almost 10 years and has helped several organizations with their front office automation. Ben will lead today's discussion and will walk us through a few examples of how CPQ Cloud can be set up in your environment. We also have Manoj Turlapati. He is an industry expert and leads the transportation management practice at Excel Alpha. Manoj has over 17 years of experience helping organizations with their logistics initiatives, strategies, and implementing the right software solutions for them. A few housekeeping items before we move forward. All participants are put on mute, so please use the chat window to direct all your questions to me, Devang Bhavsar, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. If there are questions that we can get to, we'll respond individually after the webinar. And we'll also be recording today's session, so I'll make sure that you all have a link of the recording by end of and with that, I will hand it off to Ben. Ben, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So for our webinar today, we wanted to talk about the unique quoting challenges the transportation logistics industry faces and how they can leverage CPQ to modernize the generation of their customer-specific pricing agreements and then the rating, otherwise you can call it the pricing of shipments. So we also want to talk about how does CPQ fit in with your existing transportation management solutions and where does it potentially replace others? We've also prepared a demo, so later on I'll show you a CPQ Cloud implementation that's integrate with Oracle Transportation Management, go through the process of generating an LTL pricing agreement, and then generate a shipment price based off the custom pricing that we put together in the LTL pricing agreement. So as Devang said, at the end we'll do a Q&A session, make sure that we set aside time to address any questions that people have based on the presentation and the demo. So when we talk about the transportation logistics industry, really we're talking about the movement of goods. So this could be through any number of methods. It could be by truck, train, plane, ship, barge, carrying it from one place to another. Could really fall into any of those. And each of those can even be further subdivided. It could be parcel. For trucks, it could be less than a truckload, bulk, intermodal. There are many different ways that we can classify it, many ways that goods are moved. So for this discussion, we're going to focus on organizations where we're moving those goods, where this transportation logistics is a significant portion of their business. So either they're selling a product and the transportation of it is a vital aspect of it, or the transportation logistics is their business. So what we see typically with these companies is there's a very sophisticated and detailed contractual agreement that dictates the pricing. And then there's a very complex method for actually calculating the pricing, or otherwise known as rating, to accompany them. So what are the challenges in the transportation logistics industry? So one of the major things, and I've already touched on it, is that typically there's a very detailed customer-specific pricing agreement that has to be generated. And today, like many other industries as we go in with CPQ, is that quoting process is very manual. They're using Excel to generate these agreements as one-offs, or there's multiple spreadsheets that they use. One of the other big challenges is that there are very complex rules that are being used to calculate these shipment prices. They typically have a very strict order of precedence. And so when you're applying those, The second part of this is, or the third part really, is the rating engines may be running on very old technologies. Several of the customers we've already spoken to about CPQ are still running their rating based off of mainframes. Just to give you an idea of how old, how dated some of these processes are. And so what that leads to is that there's a manual process for pricing shipments. Often a day's shipments get aggregated, and then they're manually priced by an offshore team for each and every customer order. So there's no way for either the shipping company or the company, and by extension their end customer, to know what a particular shipment costs until after they go through that manual process to price these shipments. So jumping into it, what is CPQ? So CPQ stands for Configure, Price, Quote. And it is a sales tool. It's designed to help you automate your sales process. Benefits from that being you close deals faster, you improve your accuracy, you're tying together your front office sales systems with your back office, transportation management, your TMS system, and your ERP and invoicing systems. So breaking that down, the configuration aspect is for the selection of services and products. And these would be driven by business rules that you use to fulfill your customers' needs. The pricing is now taking this configuration, other information about your customers, any other relevant data to generate the right price, make sure you're getting the right margins for your business costs, and any other data that we need to gather, aggregate from other systems to create that detailed proposal or pricing agreement. And then finally, the Q in CPQ is quote. And that's really generating the internal document or externally facing document you put in your customer's hands. In this case, it's a pricing agreement to ultimately close that business and win the deal. So I'll walk through an example. It goes through all these different areas of CPQ a little bit on here in the demo. So just walking through a sample solution. This is a very simple setup. Without CRM, so we can leverage CPQ standalone using the built-in contacts manager, or we can integrate with EBS, CDM, or any other source for the relevant address information. And so CPQ is fulfilling the need of generating these custom pricing agreements. So the way it would work with a logistics transportation customer is that buy price information, which is pretty much the amount of money it costs my organization to ship these goods. And that could be from our own fleet of trucks. We could be subcontracting with other logistics carriers. Wherever that pricing is coming from, we can pull that in from the transportation management system. And then what we do in CPQ is we set our target pricing, we either through discounting of those rates, or we can set a target margin and upmark those prices, whatever we need to do to set the appropriate sell price for those services. And then as we advance it on, we send the finalized pricing agreement back into EBS and back into the TMS. If your TMS is handling the rating, then we push those prices back into OTM, for instance, and then it will be responsible for sending finalized shipment prices into the ERP for invoicing. If the TMS is only handling execution, so it's only handling when and where the trucks, when and where the packages are moving, then CPQ has the ability to act as that rating engine and generate the shipment prices for invoices. And then we'll send that information both to ERP for future invoicing and then TMS to actually do the execution. So if we continue on this, we can add a CRM on the front end. So CRM giving us great access to account information. So we can pull that directly into CPQ. We can pull in previous quotes and order history to help us give a more detailed analysis, make a better, more targeted proposal for our particular customer. And then we can also push back forecasting and pipeline information into CRM so that you have a better understanding of what that looks like and what their future potential revenues look like as well. So let's go ahead. What we can do is jump into CPQ, and I can show you what this actually looks like. So for our first demo scenario, we're going to go through the process of creating one of these pricing agreements for our LTL shipping company. And so there's several aspects creating these pricing agreements, and really they're going to be custom for every prospect that we're dealing with. And ultimately, these rates that we establish in the pricing agreement are going to drive the rates of future individual shipments. So let me hop over into CPQ, and I can show you what that looks like. So this is our CPQ homepage. On it, we've got the multiple options available to me as the user, and I can segregate these out. So maybe certain users can only do LTL while others only do the rail pricing pieces of it. In this case, I'm showing them all together. So I'm going to start out by selecting my configure LTL pricing. And so all of these different modes of transportation are really dictated by the different lanes. So we can set these up in multiple ways. So we can have zip to zip, zip 3, so it's kind of an area of zip codes, or we can do state to state type lanes. For this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demo 2 quick lanes, and we're going to be shipping goods. You know, my company is going to be based in New York City. I'm going to be shipping goods to Beverly Hills. So go from zip code 1001 to 90210. And then I also select my freight class. So we're pulling our rates from OTM. And so I'm also going to do another New York to Beverly Hills. And then I'm also going to do a freight class 100. So I can get more details into what the freight class actually is. But now what I'm doing is I'm actually reaching out to OTM or whatever backend system. We also have this demo set up to pull rates from FedEx. And so it's pulling in my buy rate. And so this is just my default price. And what I can now do is make my buy rate adjustment. So I could say, oh, well, really, we want to discount it 10% for this customer. And for the class 100, I'm going to discount it 25%. I can also customize minimum charges. So that's kind of the floor price. Any shipment I send out has to meet that minimum charge. And then there's another aspect of discounting, which is the weight break. So as an LTL carrier, I want to incentivize my customers to ship more at once. It's cheaper for me. I don't have to move as many trucks. So what I can do is I can go in here and I can select the different freight classes, and it's going to pull in what are my default weight break discount percentages for those different freight classes. And so I know I spoke to what is a freight class. In CPQ, I have this ability. I can put help and additional information to help the user guide their selection. So in this case, I've got a table that breaks down what's the freight class, what are examples of products that fall into those weight classes, and then what's the rate range per cubic foot of typical items that fall per weight class. So as freight class goes up, typically it gets more expensive to ship. They're either harder to ship items or they're very valuable items. I also have this concept of freight of all kinds. So if I want to bundle up a bunch of different classes and just bill it as a single type of freight class, I can also do that. So I can check my box and ask me, what do I want to set as my freight of all kinds class? I can also pop open my help. In this case, I've embedded a video that helps me what determines the freight of all kinds class. So I've just embedded a quick YouTube video here that can help my users intelligently make the right selections that the customer wants to see. So in this, I'm actually going to make it more granular, make it so that I have the multiple different weight classes, do the more complex case. So now I've gone through, I've configured 2 quick lanes that, you know, a real quote may have hundreds and hundreds of lines. I'm just going to keep it simple here, and we're going to do 2. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to create my logistics quote. So this is going to bring those lanes into this quote, which kind of acts as my wrapper. I can aggregate if I have a multi-leg or a multi-mode contract here. I could go in and then I could add in the ocean going freight pricing. I could add in the train freight pricing and create one proposal that has all those different modes of transportation on it. So in this case, I'm assigning a contract number just based off the quote ID. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that and make it something custom. I'm going to make it 98765. It's pulling in my user information. So I'm acting as Lisa Jones for the purpose of this presentation. And I can go ahead, I can change that if I want to put in different numbers. I can also select my contact. Who am I quoting this to? Who is actually ultimately going to be footing the bill? I can select that through CPQ using the built-in contacts manager. Otherwise, if I'm integrated with CRM, I can also just pull that data directly in from my opportunity. So my Sales Cloud or my Salesforce opportunity can pull that directly into CPQ. So in this case, I'm going to set my quote to Tom Daniels and Harry Tucker. And so that'll populate those fields for me so I don't have to do it myself. So the next part of this is not only are there lanes on these customer-specific agreements, there's also accessorials. So these are fees for services during the shipment. So this may be onloading charge or an offloading charge. I've got my after-hours delivery. So I can make these accessorials or these services available based on my customer. So maybe there's certain fees that I just don't want it to be available to my customer, or maybe we know that they're always going to be using certain types of fees and they're going to maybe have a pre-negotiated rate, or they have a volume discount with us because they do it so often. So I can go ahead, I can say, well, there's an after-hours delivery fee. My minimum fee is $93. My maximum fee is $740. So I can say, hey, it's always going to be $100 for this customer. And I can do the same thing too, not just as a fixed fee type part. I can also do a multiplier. So this is going to take a percentage of my rate and add it in as a fee. So I can do an after-hours pickup fee, override my rate multiplier and say, oh, well, that's going to be 2.2% of my rate. Will also be added on as an after-hours pickup fee. So not only, so I have a big long list, and I can also unselect these and just say, you know what, I'm never shipping to McCormick Place. I don't need to have it. I don't need that to be an available option to them, so I can unselect it. We also have the concept, so this is my predefined list of accessorials. I can also go through and define a custom. So, I can have a lumper charge. So these are the guys who are loading and manually unloading the trucks. And I could say, hey, this guy's going to cost me $50 for any shipment that needs them. So now I can update and I can add this to my existing transaction. And I can go down here. So this is my line item information. So I can pull this up and show the details for my different line items. So I can show the lane information. I can also show the information for my accessorials on what are the rate multipliers and what are the fees. So the next step, what I want to do is prepare the document. I want to actually generate that pricing agreement that I can put into a customer's hand. So if I go over to my Documents tab, I have different options for what's available. How do I want this agreement to show? Are there certain sections I want to include or exclude? Do I want a really simple quote? Do I want something really complex? So I can drop in. I'm going to put it on a fancy cover page. I'm going to put in my cover letter, and I have the ability to edit the text on that. So I have a boilerplate default, but I can go in and actually customize that based on either a template that I set up myself, that my administrator sets up for me, or I can go in and just freeform type whatever I want to appear on the cover letter. In this case, I do want to show both the lanes and accessorials, and then I'm going to print my terms and conditions. And we have the ability, we can do multi-language, so I can select a different language I want this to to generate in. I'm going to go ahead and be wild and select English here. And then I'm going to generate my pricing agreement. And so this is going to take all the information we've gathered, the customer contact information, the lanes, the accessorials that we configured and selected, and we're going to build a proposal around that. So that quick and easy. I've got my cover page. It's pulled in that I'm quoting to Harry Tucker. It's prepared by me, Lisa Jones. I've got my cover letter with my name. It automatically is populating in the customer names, populating in my names. And then I get my list of lanes and accessorials. So it's showing off my origins, my destinations, classes, rates, my weight breaks, all the accessorials I picked and configured, and then my lovely terms and conditions, which are exciting. And then I can also set up CPQ so that I can redline these. So I can print this out as a Word document and say, hey, there's certain sections within the terms and conditions we're willing to negotiate on. And so I can make those sections editable and then go through an approval process to actually incorporate those red lines into this pricing agreement. Alternatively, if I don't want to include all that, I can just unselect these different options, and I can generate just a very simple pricing agreement. Maybe we're still very early in the process. They're not ready to really see my formalized proposal, and I can just print off that single page. So it makes it quicker and easier. You're not shifting so much data back and forth. So now it's just a one-pager. And so I can also do, before that document ever goes out the door, maybe I'm a Mustang sales rep here and I've discounted too much, or I've done things that don't make sense. I can also put draft watermarks, or I can prevent that document from being printed until after it goes through an approval process. So I could potentially submit this quote. It'll pop up with reasons why. In this case, because I included LTL, it's got to go to my LTL product manager. They're going to look through this, make sure it's good before I really get it out in the customer hands. And then once this agreement is finalized, I can send it, I can create this as an order, and it goes into the ERP system to make it ready for invoicing and billing to the customer, and I can send it into my TMS system for execution and potentially the rating if TMS is going to handle rating. Otherwise, for the next step in the demo here, I'm going to show you how we can do rating within CPQ. So let me go. So that's really the second demo scenario that I want to show you, is being able to generate now my shipping rate based off this agreement that we just put together. So this is after the initial conversations have happened. We finalized that pricing agreement. That's now a executed contract, and it's ready to go. I'm ready to. My customer's now ready to ship its goods. So I'm logging in now as a customer service rep. And what we want to do is capture the details for a particular shipment. So they have a pallet sitting on a dock somewhere that they need to get from New York to Beverly Hills. So let's go through pricing that and how that's going to look. So I'm going to jump back to my home page. And I'm going to go here to my calculating shipping rate. So we could also use this to generate a spot quote, so a quote that does not have one of these contracts. In this case, we're going to go ahead and use the existing contract that we just built ourselves. So I know my contract was 98765. And I also have this find button. And since there's only a single lane on it, it's automatically pulling that in. I could also make this so the contract ID is a selectable list of what's available to me as the customer service rep, and same thing for the lanes. I could just pick my lanes, but we kept the example simple just to make our lives easier for demoing. I can also select where my base rate's coming from. Is that OTM? Is that FedEx? Is that from any other third-party system that we're integrating to? It could be another TMS system if you have multiple TMS systems. Could be any other third-party that we're also pulling the rates from. And so we're also generating, this is just a simple Google map just showing here's our origin, here's our destination. For a real shipment, you'd also be entering in the full address information, not just the zip codes. But for brevity's sake, I simplified it down to just zip codes here. And so we see our shipment miles, 2,081. And then I can also say, hey, we have a number of items on this. So I'm going to go ahead and up that to 2. We're going to do 2 items since we set up 2 different shipment classes. I'm going to say we have 5,000 pounds of shipment class 55 and 5,000 pounds of shipment class 100. So those are the 2 lanes we set up. And so now we're going to go through a whole list of rules and looking at order of precedence. So looking to see, is there a lane set up for this particular shipment? Does this customer have this kind of agreement? We could go even layers deeper, like are they paying for this delivery up front? Is it COD? But we're just looking for pulling in those rates, and if they don't have that contractual rate, then we'll use just the publicly available rate. In this case, we have both, so we're pulling in that 37.30, which is the discounted rate we put together, and our weight break based on how much this is all together. We also have the ability, we can do, especially in the case of a spot quote, we can add in an additional discount. So I can say I want to give a 10% additional discount here, maybe a 25 additional discount here. And so we get all of our, calculates the net price for our shipment, shows what additional discounting we've put together, and then it shows the total for this shipment. So I can create this freight bill. It's going to push it into the ERP, push the price of the shipment into ERP so that we can invoice them later for it. And it's going to push the details into our TMS system so that we can dispatch the people and the truck to go pick up this shipment and get this thing underway. And so that's how we can use CPQ to generate these custom pricing agreements, and then we can use them to actually price out the shipments that happen downstream from them. So there's also a lot of additional scenarios for this. So we can handle multiple modes of transportation. So that could be a combined pricing agreement that includes, LTL, can include intermodal and ocean-going transport, and we can put those all within a single quote and create one proposal, one pricing agreement that covers all of the customer's pricing needs if there's multiple modes. We can even get much more in depth. There's a lot of aspects into what goes into the pricing of really any transportation logistics customers pricing. So there's things we didn't show, like a fuel surcharge fee, and there could be multitudes of other fees, as well as many more rules that are dictating these prices, as well as how do we know what's the right discount amount. So there's many more options available for how do we handle these complex pricing situations. Some other scenarios that we could potentially handle that are going to come up are change management. What happens if customers start shipping from point A to point B, and halfway through maybe they resell that order to somebody else, or a customer needs to ship it to a different location? So we also have that ability. We can create change orders to redirect these shipments and send them to other places. And then the other aspect of this is we can also create that customer-facing portal, give customers the ability to go in. They can create the shipments themselves. They can get the price right then and there. They can see that. We can either pull it from the TMS system, or we can generate it within CPQ and make it simpler for them to get that information. So those are just some of the examples of additional scenarios that we can handle. be it multi-leg or multiple modes of transportation. So there's a lot that we can do with CPQ, that we have a lot of flexibility that we can really use within the tool. So with that wraps up our demo and the walkthrough of our high-level walkthrough here of the transportation industry. So if you have questions, please send those on to Devang, and then Devang will ask them, and we'll address them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ben. And yes, please send me any questions that you might have. Ben, we do have a couple of questions here. One is, how can CPQ, so what are the different types of documents that you can generate from CPQ? You showed pricing agreement, but can I create spot quote or some other agreements?
Yeah, so built within CPQ, we have, there's a couple tools, the main one being Doc Designer, and that's a WYSIWYG editor. And so from that, it's a drag and drop interface that you can build whatever documents you want. And really the format you can generate with CPQ, you can do PDF, you can do Word documents. There's also the ability, I mean, we could really output in about any format we want to. We've also done Excel documents. We've also done like CSV files. We've done XML files for moving data around.
Okay.
But I think most customers are going to usually use either that DocX or the PDF format is what we see.
Okay.
And you can have multiple documents, all different at different points in the sales process as well.
Okay. We have another question, and it seems like it's on the integration capabilities of CPQ. The question is, can CPQ be used as a central rating engine which other system can query to get their pricing?
Yeah, absolutely. There are extensive web services built within CPQ, so we don't have to use the front end to even use all of the pricing logic built into CPQ. I know for a long time, I believe they still are a customer, Royal Mail actually uses it. So if you ship a package in London for parcel post, they're calling CPQ to drive the prices of those parcels. And yeah, absolutely, we can use it as a centralized rating engine. And then we can also work with multiple TMS systems to pull in pricing from those, be it the buy price, be it the sell price. So we can really integrate with just about anything. And there's a very robust API built in.
Okay. Another question is, can CPQ put pricing together from multiple sources? So if I partner with other shippers, can I put together a pricing agreement using my partner's pricing for different legs of the shipment?
Yes, we can. So I showed how we could use different configurations and do the multi-mode. In the same vein, we can also pull that in. I know OTM has the ability to use the sourcing module, which can aggregate pricing from multiple shippers, so we could integrate with that and pull the pricing from there. Or we could set it up so that CPQ is handling that integration with those other systems so that we can aggregate pricing directly into CPQ from those multiple points.
Okay. And there's another integration question. So can you speak more about integration between OTM and CPQ Cloud?
Sure. So let me back up here. We'll go ahead and we can work from this slide. There's a few different sources of information that we're going to be pushing and pulling with the TMS system. So with OTM, and Manoj, feel free to jump in here if you have anything to add. To start, while we're preparing the pricing agreement, I think what we're primarily interested in is getting those buy prices, being able to pull those in manipulate them to create the proposal for what is the customer going to pay, and then sending that information back into OTM. So if you're doing the rating then in OTM, OTM pretty much takes over at that point. If you're going to be doing the rating in CPQ, then when you're creating those shipments and doing the rating within CPQ, then what we'll also have to push is that shipment information back into OTM to handle the execution of that shipment. So that's picking up the goods, delivering the goods.
Yep. So this is Manoj. So if you think about the process from a logistics company, the way that the buy pricing is essentially if you are a non-asset based kind of an organization. If you have your own assets, you know what the cost, or at least we would assume that you have some metrics that you can go to understand your internal costs, which includes not only just the equipment, but also your driver pay and other repairs and maintenance and the cost of the cab and internal on-cab devices and all that kind of stuff. So all those costs are typically analyzed to determine your per mile cost or weight cost, or however you define your pricing to internal pricing. That is what you would use as a baseline to start your defining what your sell price to your customer is. So that's what the buy price is. If you're asset-based company, if you're a non-asset-based, you go out to your carriers. If you're like a 3PL that don't have assets, then you can go out to your carriers and get the quote for moving the goods. That is your cost, and that is done using the sourcing module within OTM, right? Once you use the sourcing module, the rates go into OTM. CPQ can pull those rates, query those rates using what we call the RAQ. It's a rate inquiry process. You can go into OTM and get that information for that rate, and then you can use that rate. That rate is loaded into CPQ and use that one for calculating what you would quote to your customer as a sell price. And like Ben mentioned before, that once the sell price is defined, you would want to load that sell rate back into OTM using the rate inquiry, the rate interface, loading the rates using the rate interface. And once that is loaded, then you have all the buy and sell in OTM, and then orders can come into OTM. Either if you use CPQ as your order orchestration tool, then you get the orders in CPQ loaded, send them over into TMS to do the rating, and it's both the buy side, determining the sell side and defining the buy side as well. And then and then you do the execution in TMS. And once it is delivered, then you would bill your customer using what we call the bill within OTM, and then that is integrated into ERP as it is shown here. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Manoj. Mm-hmm. And the other question we have is, how does CPQ handle precedence in the rating process?
Sure. So pretty much the way it handles precedence is however we tell it to handle precedence. Built within CPQ, we have a lightweight scripting language called BML, and we control how that logic is implemented. It's tremendously, it's customizable for however we say, whatever the order the rules is that we want them to run, we can run them in that order. So we have complete control over how any rules are running, and then we can set that order of precedence to make sure we're executing it in the way that you want them to execute those rules.
Okay, just a new question just came in. Can you speak to the integration of base rates, like from Rateware Excel, and a customer-specific set of discounts and minimums?
Sure. So I think I mean, that's to an extent what I demoed. Is we pulled the base rates in today in the demo from OTM, but we could also pull them in from Rateware. And then we can make whatever changes we need to, be that a markup or a discount on those base rates, save them to that customer-specific pricing agreement, and then later when we're doing the rating or calculating the shipment price, we reference the appropriate place. So if they have that pricing agreement, then we'll use those. If they don't have one and we want to generate like a spot quote, we can go to Rateware and pull those the base rates from Rateware.
And an interesting question. Can drivers have access to CPQ to capture shipping actuals?
Yeah, so I think that's not only can it be a customer-facing portal, but we can customize it based on role, or really it's configure. CPQ, we have this concept, really, everything's configured. We're not custom developing software. We're configuring within CPQ itself. So I think that's a very important thing to note. It's not like when we're doing this configuration, we're not creating something that's unsupportable or going to be very difficult to maintain. It's all configurable. But we can configure the platform so that different users can see different things. So maybe the sales rep who's putting together the pricing sees a certain set of information. Their manager may see more margin discounting information than the sales rep sees. And then we can also have a view for the truck drivers to see information relevant to them, and they can see the actuals for that shipment.
Okay. So it seems like that's all the questions that we have. So if there are any more questions, please email it to us at cpq@excelalpha.com. Like I said in the beginning, we are recording this session, and I will send you the link by end of the week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.